How's it going, everyone? It's Hobby from Worship.1000 today. It's February 14th, 2021, and I hope you all are having a great Valentine's Day, as today we're going to be focusing on the major, extremely major winter storm that's going to impact the Midwest, the Southeast, and the Northeast with potentially close to a foot of snow and up to a half an inch of ice possible, or a little bit more than that. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at the GFS forecast model, where you see that there's currently, based off of what the GFS model expected at this point, there's a large swath of snow throughout Texas, extending to Oklahoma and Kansas and Missouri as well. And the Futurecast radar further exemplifies how big and broad this swath of snow is, as you see that currently there's several bands of snow moving through Oklahoma and northern Texas. We do have a little bit of snow in Missouri, and it's expected to move a little bit further southward before it takes a turn up northward as a result of this Bermuda Ridge that's located right around the southeast coast. And you see that it's gonna dump a decent amount of snow through Texas, and then really bring heavy snow throughout Louisiana and Mississippi, and then move on further northward to affect the Northeast, headed into early Tuesday into late Monday. So this is going to impact a lot of people from the Midwest to the Southeast. Let's take a look at what the GFS model is currently saying or forecasting over the next 48 hours regarding this storm. And at this point, it's becoming fairly certain what is going to happen. There could be some small changes here and there, but for the most part, I'd say for the Southeast, it's pretty much certain that at least a scenario very similar like this will occur, where we're going to see snow throughout Texas all day today. And you see that eventually the ice swath expands a little bit. It gets a little bit more lengthy as a result of the increase in unstable air that I was talking about during previous videos, where we see a strong northwesterly wind component associated with this high pressure system, and that's bringing a lot of that Arctic air further southward, and it's interacting with this much warmer southerly Gulf of Mexico air that's bringing a lot more humid air aloft into the atmosphere. So as a result, we're seeing condensation extend to the Midwest, so southern Illinois and Missouri and Arkansas will experience snow from this. And you see that what's also interesting is that we begin to see the ice form right around Louisiana and extending to just east of Memphis, Tennessee, and throughout Houston, and going down to Corpus Christi as well, where it seems like there's going to be temperature differences in the mid levels of the atmosphere to allow for freezing rain to occur, not only in the southeast, but this will extend to the Ohio River Valley and extending further and further to the northeast. And that could become very dangerous when we're talking about an ice threat throughout the United States, where you guys typically don't see an ice threat this magnitude. And headed even more forward, you see that the ice becomes more heavy because this storm is now over the very warm Gulf of Mexico water, and there's a lot of unstable air right around this region, enhancing the precipitation rate throughout the southeast, especially in Louisiana, and that will cause just treacherous ice conditions. And it continues on for a 6-hour time period for some areas, especially right around Baton Rouge, just to the east of New Orleans. While I don't expect New Orleans to get much of any ice, maybe a little bit of ice, there's still that possibility that if this moves only like 10-20 miles west, to the east, then you guys could easily get a tenth of an inch of ice. So you guys gotta stay aware of this, definitely. And then just to the east of Jackson, Mississippi, you're gonna experience heavy ice as well. And right around Jackson, Mississippi, and further westward, you're gonna experience heavy snow from this, where 8 to 12 inches of snow is expected throughout Louisiana and Mississippi, and extending to Arkansas, which you don't really see much at all in the southeast, where it's typically too warm for snow. But we're talking about close to a foot of snow in some areas, which is quite rare to see. And then you see that ice extend to Alabama as well, to the northwestern portion of Alabama, and even going further northward, since there's just enough unstable air to allow for condensation and precipitation over further northward, then we're beginning to see already the snow and ice occur as early as Monday. And taking a look at the Futurecast radar to get a better idea of what the timing is expected to be, by right around midnight tonight, the snow will extend to Illinois and Kentucky, and then it should approach the northeast right around Monday morning, where New York City and Pennsylvania will begin to experience the first flakes of snow coming towards you guys during the morning. However, this isn't the main snowstorm associated with the majority of the snowfall you're going to experience in the Northeast. So you guys got to keep that in mind, that this snow will be relatively light in the morning and will be far from what you're about to experience once this main low pressure system comes through, where all the convergence and the humid air aloft is located. So if we continue to move forward, you see that heavy snow eventually extends to the northeast. I'd say right around Monday night, and then the ice threat should be at its worst for a lot of northeast right around Monday, very late Monday into very early Tuesday, where it should be very bad road conditions in some areas, and up to a quarter of an inch or more of ice is currently forecasted for some areas in the Northeast. So you guys need to keep a close eye on this storm. Now, in terms of the factors that could change the outcome of the forecast, at this point there isn't many things that could change when we're talking about a forecast within only 48 hours. It's pretty much impossible at this point that this storm simply ceases to exist or just moves out to sea and doesn't affect anybody. It's going to affect the United States. It's going to be a major snowstorm. That's inevitable at this point. However, there could be some small changes that maybe could make a big difference in terms of your forecast, and that really all depends on the location of this low pressure system. And it's going to be especially interesting for those right around the freezing rain line, because the freezing rain line won't be very massive compared to how large and broad the snow swath is, or how big the rain swath is. The freezing rain line is at a very precise location usually, and when we're talking about something that's in a very precise location that's very narrow, then any small differences in the forecast within several miles, any margin of error could make a big difference in terms of what you experience. Because if this moves only around 20 miles to the east, you could be talking about a much more major ice threat for a lot of you guys on the coast. However, if it stays in its current location, it's only going to be a rain event. So any small differences can make a big difference in terms of the forecast. While it does seem likely that for the areas expected to receive snow that you will experience snow, if you're closer to that rain snow line, you need to keep a close eye on this storm, even if the current forecast is rain, because like I said, any small differences in the forecast you could make a big difference in terms of what you experience. So what will change a forecast is how far east or how far west the low pressure system goes, and that really all depends on the position of this ridge. While it's a lot more certain where this ridge will be and how strong it will be only 24 to 48 hours out to determine when it turns up northward, it's still not 100% sure, and it never is when we're talking about forecasts in the future. So if the ridge ends up being a little bit stronger than the forecast models are currently detecting, or if it moves a little bit further to the east, to the west, then that would mean the low pressure would move further to the west, and the ice threat would shift further west as well, to maybe portion where maybe Jackson, Mississippi, or Memphis might get affected, or maybe Cincinnati. It will mainly be an ice event rather than a snow event. And then for the coastal regions, it could be an all rain event, which would definitely be good news for those along the I-95 corridor. However, at the same time, if this ridge is a little weaker, then we could see that storm take a track further to the eastward, and that would also shift the ice threat further eastward, and as well as a snow threat. So the Interstate 95 corridor would get impacted far more than what is currently forecasted. And based off of the trends we've been seeing from both the computer models, the GFS and the European model, it seems like they're now leaning towards bringing the storm a little bit further westward than anticipated. More specifically, the GFS model was leaning towards that direction, where it took where like if you compared it to the previous forecast runs, I have to go a little bit more back. So there's a low pressure as of right now, and then you see that in the past runs, it was a little bit further eastward, so it meant more of an ice threat for closer along the coast. But now the low pressure is a little bit further westward, so as a result, the ice threat has shifted further westward as well, and it's now mimicking the European model a little bit more than it was earlier, where we sort of see the ice sort of extend horizontally rather than vertically like the GFS model was forecasting, because you see that they're very similar now in terms of their forecasts. The timing is still a little bit off though, because the GFS model is still a little bit faster in bringing this storm, while the European is a little bit slower. So you also need to keep in mind of the speed difference. The European model is slightly more reliable than the GFS model, so I sort of lean at that it's gonna come a little bit later, but at the same time, it's better to just prepare now. It's better to be safe than sorry. It's just better to be safe than sorry, and not to assume that the GFS or the European model will be 100% correct, because who knows, this storm could come a lot faster than you anticipate, and you might be in trouble because of that. So just prepare now, because it's inevitable that this storm is going to come, and it's going to bring a lot of snow and ice throughout a lot of the East Coast. However, again, my point is that if you're close to the rain snow line, just be aware of your forecast, because any small differences can make a big difference. So in terms of snowfall forecasts, based off of the current consensus from the European and GFS model, here is a current snowfall forecast, and you see just a large area of 6 to 12 inches of snow. Let me show you guys warnings, actually, because there's a lot of warnings currently regarding this snowstorm, and you're gonna see that there's a huge amount of warnings all throughout the United States. You see that millions of Americans are under winter storm warnings as it extends to Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, the Ohio River Valley states, and I expect it to even extend further and further once we get closer to that actual event in the Northeast, where currently winter storm watches are in effect, but I expect those to be upgraded to warnings very, very soon. And there are some ice warning issued for there are some ice storm warnings issued for West Virginia, but I also do expect it to extend further in the Northeast once we get closer to the actual event. And while you don't see a ton of ice storm warnings throughout Louisiana, despite the amount of ice you're going to receive, typically the National Weather Service just lists ice storm warning associated with snow as a winter storm warning. So do definitely still expect a lot of ice throughout Louisiana, eastern Texas, and Mississippi, because it's gonna still be a major ice threat for you guys, even though you might not be in an ice storm warning, because they're gonna experience both the combination of ice and snow from this snowstorm. But in terms of my snowfall forecast, you see that there's a large area of 6 to 12 inches, so this is considered major for a lot of you guys. I think many areas could receive a foot of snow, maybe a little bit more in localized areas, especially in the higher elevations potentially. So this is going to be major, and just prepare, just stay indoors. And although it's Valentine's Day in Texas and Oklahoma, you might want to reconsider making those Valentine's Day plans, because there could be snow heavy at times today. And for the rest of the Midwest and the Northeast, you definitely need to prepare, because this storm is going to come very quick tomorrow and move very quickly up the East Coast. And you see just south of that, you see major ice storm listed, as you could see up to a half an inch of ice, maybe a little bit more. So let's take a look at the ice storm forecast from the National Weather Service, and you see a large area of over between a quarter of an inch to half an inch of ice, which is just devastating. That's a ton of ice relative to other ice storms, and that definitely could cause power outages because once all that ice accumulates on the branches, there's only so much weight the branches could hold, and they fall on power lines, and that's what causes power outages during ice storms. It also creates very slick road conditions. It ices your car, and it just creates chaos. And like I said in my other video, I'd rather have a quarter of an inch of ice over 10 inches of snow, which is saying a lot and really shows the magnitude of how bad ice is. And there are even some areas where you could experience over a half an inch of ice in Louisiana, which is just very bad. And you see that in New Orleans. While for those in New Orleans, while you aren't in the forecast just yet, look how close you are to the forecast. This is something you need to at least stay aware of as well, because if that shift moves a little bit further to the east, then you guys could experience up to a quarter of an inch of ice just like that. So you guys need to stay aware of this. And then you see Jackson, Mississippi is involved, and throughout Alabama, Louisiana, and even eastern Texas, extending to Houston, where you could see up to a quarter of an inch of ice in many areas. And as for the Northeast, you see that it's slightly less. It's between a tenth of an inch or a quarter of an inch of ice, mainly throughout the New York City metropolitan area and extending to New England. However, there are some patches where currently over a quarter of an inch of ice is expected just outside of Boston. And in Boston, it's very close. It's going to be a very close forecast because you again could be close to that freezing rain threat. And depending on where this track shifts over the next several days, you could definitely be in it. And just outside of Washington D.C., you need to be aware of this because up to a tenth of an inch or a quarter of an inch of ice is forecast. And then you see just south, right around Kentucky, up to 3/4 of an inch of ice is expected. And this is just a lot of ice, guys. Even a tenth of an inch of ice could cause problems on the roads. So just stay prepared and stay aware of the dangerous ice conditions. And while you might not be able to see the ice accumulate on the roads, typically it is on the roads, it is accumulating. And the way to notice is if you see the roads a little bit darker than usual, it looks like it's wet, but there's ice on the roads, and you need to stay aware of that when you're driving. I don't want you guys to risk going out during dangerous ice conditions, so just make sure to stay aware, heed your warnings, and just stay safe along the northeast and the southeast, where it's going to be a major, extremely major snowstorm and winter storm overall. But we also have to keep in track of this next potential snowstorm, which is going to originate again from the Northwest Pacific and move through the East Coast. And then we do see another potential major snowstorm that could affect the same areas that are experiencing this current snowstorm. And this is going 4 days out, so there's still time to narrow down the forecast, to iron out the forecast. But the European model also agrees with this, which is giving me a little bit more confidence that this will happen, because both the computer models are not only agreeing that there's going to be a low trough moving through the United States, it's going to move in a very similar fashion and form in a very similar fashion. If you compare the two, you see that they're very similar in terms of where they bring the snow, where they bring the rain. So this is definitely something we need to keep in watch, because this could potentially be major headed into Thursday. And I'll make sure to continue updating you guys regarding this snowstorm. And it really all depends, again, on the position of the jet stream, the orientation, how much unstable air there is to strengthen this storm. So there's a lot of factors we need to keep in mind. But I'll make sure to update you guys later as this storm continues to progress and as we get closer to the forecast. And you see that the snow extends even further northward and affects a lot of people in the Northeast. And in terms of the snowfall forecast, the total snowfall forecast with this potential snowstorm, based off what the European model is saying, it's hard to I'm gonna try to not mix up the snow from this snowstorm with this one, because again these are two different snowstorms. But you see that around 5 to 8 inches is expected throughout New York City, extending to just north of Washington D.C. Philadelphia is involved, and this even extends to the Northeast, where on top of the snow you're gonna experience from this coming snowstorm, you're gonna experience another 8 inches of snow potentially from this. So this could definitely be another major snowstorm for you guys, and you need to stay aware of this because it could definitely be another major one. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather-related content. And I hope you guys have a great Valentine's Day and enjoy it with your family, your friends, your special one, anyone, and just enjoy it. And I hope you guys have a good day.